Yeah, well, the inflation deflation economic cycle that I created showed that in September, we took a jump from sector two and three. So sector two is disinflation, three is stasis, three is reflation, with a little bit of growth thrown in there too. And I continue. I haven't been short the market. Haven't been net short the market since 22. Haven't had any shorts except for a small high yield short since the first part of 2023. I still maintain that small, unprofitable 1.5% short and high yield because I think that's going to be where the earthquake really begins in the high yield bond market. But hey, listen, we're in reflation right now. Economic growth is not accelerating fast; it's not decelerating. So you just don't short that market. You just stay and be patient and realize, let's just make money while we can, as safely as possible. But you don't fall asleep here, Anthony. You can't fall asleep here because we have the most dangerous stock market in history. If you look at the valuations, if you look at the construction of GDP, it is extremely dangerous. And you just have to pay attention.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about sort of, go more into why I think it's dangerous. So it's more to do with the valuations. It's just, gone up so much.
Well, first,
Comparing it to the past.
yeah. So, if you look at some of my favorite valuation metrics, of course, the Buffett indicator, 207% of GDP. During Ronald Reagan's time, which was the first time we had a really great president that I was around. I'm born in 63, so I'm 61 years old. This president came in, Ronald Reagan, and rejuvenated the whole country. And he slashed the marginal rates, the highest rates. In fact, the GDP grew at 2.5%, whoop-de-doo. And the second year, 82, it shrank by 1.8%, the GDP. So just because you have a president, which I'm behind, I voted for, I think he can do a lot of good things to this country, far better than Kamala Harris would have done, who was an avowed egalitarian socialist, who actually, one of her goals was, and it came out of her own mouth, is like, hey, we need to ensure not just the level playing field, which is wonderful, and for that, we want to ensure equal outcomes. So that's a redistributionist, and we don't want that in this country. This country is a meritocracy. But when Donald Trump is going to take the reins of power, the total market cap of equities 207%, as opposed to 40%, which it was under Ronald Reagan. The national debt to GDP is 125%. It's absolutely a debt burden that's going to drag down GDP. The public and private sector debt's at a record. Ronald Reagan had 30% national debt to GDP. He had plenty of room to spend and to stimulate. We don't have that anymore. We also had a booming labor force growth. Women were entering. That was the last decade where the women came in after World War, in the 50s and 60s and 70s and the 80s. Labor force growth boomed from 63% to 67%. That was the highest we've seen in 45 years. Nothing like that has ever happened again, and it's not going to happen again. Women are already in the labor force, which is lovely. So, unless you start employing household pets, you're not going to have an increase in the labor force. So it's going to be very difficult for Ronald Reagan for Donald Trump to duplicate what Reagan did, no matter how much you like the man. He just has a different set of circumstances. And if you look at things like price to sales of the S&P, it's at a record high. We have a huge bubble in real estate, such that commercial real estate and regular residential, it's just not moving. There's no transactions. The transactions have dried up because people can't afford to buy a new home. When you add taxes and insurance to the equation, it's just unaffordable. So there's a lot of challenges that aren't going to go away just because you elected Donald Trump, unfortunately. And we do have this reconciliation I would call it a grand reconciliation of asset prices. Asset prices don't belong at 208 or 78% of GDP. It just don't belong there. It belong like 80 to 100% just to be around fair value of GDP. So you can make the argument, well, GDP is going to skyrocket. I just told you why it's not going to skyrocket. It really can't. And I'm not even telling you that I haven't even discussed the fact that Reagan came in and he didn't impose massive tariffs and deportations either, which is a threat that Donald Trump is threatened to do, which would be a depressant to growth. half of GDP growth comes from productivity and the other half comes from labor force growth. Well, you're going to eliminate a lot of people that are in the workforce if you deport 10 million people. So yeah, it's going to be, we're going to have a grand reconciliation of asset prices.